Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something major. What happens when that classic American dream route, the H-1B visa, suddenly gets hit with a massive new price tag?
Yeah, and how that's pushing skilled tech folks to look seriously and quickly at Canada, specifically permanent residency.
Exactly. So the mission today.
It's pretty clear we've gone through the latest analysis, the legal takes, all that source material. We want to pull out the real trade-offs, the actual costs, and the strategies people are using or should be using to figure out this whole risk versus stability thing.
And we have to kick off with the number that's causing all this turbulence, this White House policy shock, a proposed USD 100,000 payment.
Right, for new H-1B applications.
Yeah.
Filed on or after September 21, 2025.
And that's key. It's for new ones, not the renewals. But just the idea of it, whether it ends up being called a surcharge or a bond or whatever, it forces everyone, companies and candidates, to stop and think, doesn't it?
Immediately.
Yeah. So for years, getting an H-1B, it was kind of a lottery, right? Timing, luck. Now you add this potential six-figure payment on top that the company has to front.
It completely shifts the calculation. It's not just a high number. It feels like a structural change. It makes you wonder who, apart from maybe the absolute biggest players, can comfortably absorb that kind of cost per hire.
And the sources we looked at, they really emphasize how this makes the alternative Canadian PR look, financially much more appealing.
It's dramatic when you put the numbers side by side.
Okay, let's do that. What are we talking for the Canadian side for, say, a single applicant using Express Entry?
Right. So for the solo person, the main government fees, you've got CAD 1,525 for the application processing itself, handled by IRCC.
Okay.
And then you add another CAD 85 for the biometrics, the fingerprinting and photo. So, roughly CAD 1,600 all in for the government fee.
1,600 Canadian dollars. Compare that to the proposed 100,000 US dollars.
Yeah.
Exactly. Depending on the exchange rate, which fluctuates, obviously. But you're generally looking at the H-1B payment being somewhere between 80 to 90 times higher than the Canadian PR fees for one person.
Wow. 80 to 90 times.
A huge multiplier.
But like you said, it's not just the number itself. It's the implication, right? That
Yeah.
80x factor.
Yeah.
An employer in the U.S., they now have this massive potential cost staring them down.
They have to ask, is this specific candidate worth the salary plus potentially $100,000 just for the visa process risk? And the analysis suggests, many employers might just say, let's rethink sponsoring new H-1Bs.
Makes sense.
And what's interesting, even if this whole H-1B payment thing gets challenged in court, which seems likely.
Oh, yeah, you'd expect that. Right. But the sources are saying the mere uncertainty of it all, the policy flip-flopping, the litigation risk that alone is pushing people, they start looking for something more predictable, like Canada's system, where the costs are fixed and known up front. So this really crystallizes the core decision, doesn't it? Are you optimizing for, getting into a specific high-paid U.S. job as fast as possible, even with the strings attached?
Or are you prioritizing long-term stability, career freedom, that kind of thing?
Exactly. And those two priorities map almost perfectly onto the two statuses. H-1B is fundamentally job first. It's temporary, tied to that one employer.
Whereas Canadian PR is status first. It's permanent, it's yours, you can take it with you wherever you work.
Let's dig into what that actually means day to day, starting with the risk factor.
You mean the H-1B's 60-day rule?
Yeah, that's the big one. Your H-1B status lives and dies with your job. If you get laid off, boom, the clock starts ticking. You have 60 days to find a new H-1B sponsor and get a transfer filed, or you have to leave the country.
60 days. That's intense pressure. Turns a career bump into a potential life upheaval.
Totally. Whereas with Canadian PR, it's permanent residence. Your right to live and work in Canada isn't tied to your employer. Change jobs, fine. Switch industries, fine. Move province, fine. There's no status drama linked to your employment.
Yeah.
That's full portability.
That peace of mind must be huge. Okay, what about families? Because bringing a spouse, kids, that's a major consideration.
Absolutely. Critical difference here. On H-1B, the spouse is typically on an H-4 visa. Getting work authorization on an H-4, well, it can be complicated, sometimes impossible depending on the stage of the green card process. Rules change.
Right, I've heard it's tricky.
With Canadian PR, though, your spouse and dependent children are included as permanent residents right along with you. And the spouse can work immediately upon landing. No separate work permit needed. Full stop.
That's massive. That potential second income just starts right away.
And another thing for families, kids included as dependents on the PR application don't age out at 21 if they were included before then. That's a huge relief compared to the U.S. system, where kids aging out during long green card waits is a real problem.
So that dual income factor could easily wipe out any difference in the main applicant's salary between, say, a U.S. offer and a Canadian one.
Often, yes. It changes the whole household financial equation. And then there's starting your own thing, entrepreneurship.
How does that compare?
Big advantage candidate again. On an H-1B, you're pretty much restricted to working only for your sponsoring employer. Side hustles, founding a startup, even significant freelancing, it's legally very difficult, often impossible.
Okay.
With Canadian PR, you have the same economic rights as a citizen, basically. You can start a business, freelance, consult, whatever, from day one. Total freedom.
So if the U.S. is still the ultimate goal for someone, maybe long-term,
Yeah.
does choosing Canada first kind of block that path?
Not really, it just changes the route. H-1B puts you in the U.S. now, yes. But Canadian PR gives you this incredibly stable platform. You get PR, then eventually Canadian citizenship.
Which takes, what, about 3 years of residency?
Roughly, yeah. 3 out of 5 years physical presence. And once you have that Canadian passport, it potentially opens up the TN visa under the USMCA trade agreement. That's a much, much simpler way for professionals in certain fields to work in the U.S. compared to the H-1B lottery and quotas.
So Canada can actually be a strategic stepping stone towards the U.S., but with more stability along the way.
Exactly. It keeps the U.S. option open, but via a different, arguably less stressful path.
It really makes sense why the lawyers and the sources are saying, look, given the uncertainty, the costs, the potential lawsuits in the U.S., just start a parallel Canada application. It's worth a bit of admin work for the option value.
That parallel plan is becoming the default advice, it seems.
Okay, so if we're convinced on the why, let's talk how. The sources lay out basically 2 main scenarios, 2 playbooks, depending on where you are right now.
Right. Playbook A is for folks already inside the U.S., maybe on an H-1B already, or on OPT after graduating.
So for them, step 1 is obviously, protect the status you have, don't let it lapse, be careful. But what about starting that Canadian track in parallel? What are the urgent steps?
Time is of the essence for a few key things. First, get your Educational Credential Assessment, or ECA, started immediately. That's where a designated body confirms your foreign degree is equivalent to a Canadian one. It takes time.
Okay, ECA first. What else?
Language tests. Book your IELTS, general training, or CELPIP test, ACP. Your score in English or French is critical for the Express Entry Point system, the Comprehensive Ranking System, or CRS. High scores make a huge difference.
So ECA and language tests are the big-time sensitive ones.
Absolutely. And start gathering documents like police clearance certificates from everywhere you've lived. These things can have lead times too. Getting these pieces moving is what creates that option value we talked about.
Got it. Now, Playbook B. This is for someone outside the U.S., maybe thinking about H-1B, but hasn't actually applied yet. They're facing that fork in the road more directly.
Yeah, the choice is starker. Try for the U.S. work permit first. Maybe get earning faster, but with the risks. Or prioritize the stability of Canadian PR from the get-go.
And for this group, the strategy is all about points, right?
Pretty much. It's CRS maximization. Again, booking those language tests and getting the ECA ordered now is paramount, because your CRS score determines if you get invited to apply for PR through Express Entry. Every point matters, and language and education are big levers you can pull relatively quickly.
And this is where the provinces come in, offering specific pathways, especially for tech workers.
Exactly. The provincial nominee programs, or PMPs, are crucial here because they work alongside Express Entry. We should flag a couple of big ones for tech.
Like Ontario.
Yeah, Ontario's OINP Human Capital Priorities stream, specifically the tech draws they do. OINP stands for Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program. They scan the Federal Express Entry pool and send out notifications of interest, basically invitations, to people with strong profiles in specific tech occupations.
So having your Express Entry profile active is key to being seen by Ontario.
Essential. And if you're looking towards the West Coast,
Vancouver, maybe.
then you look at British Columbia's BC PNP Tech Program. That's the BC Provincial Nominee Program. They hold regular draws, specifically inviting tech workers in certain occupations. What's often appealing about BC PNP Tech is that getting nominated, especially if tied to a job offer there, can sometimes lead to a work permit first, letting you move and start working while the PR processes.
So it's sort of a hybrid approach, work permit first, but backed by the provincial nomination for PR.
Correct. It can speed things up.
So the practical step here seems clear. Get that Express Entry profile created as soon as you have your ECA and language test results. Make sure you signal interest in being considered by the provinces.
Absolutely. Opt in everywhere you can. You want to be visible for those provincial draws.
Okay, we've touched on salary, but the sources really hammer this point. Don't just compare the base salary number between, say, Silicon Valley and Toronto or Vancouver. You need to look at the, what do they call it, the status adjusted comp reality.
Yeah, that's a great term for it, because the headline salary is only one part of the picture. You absolutely have to factor in the costs of getting the status and the ongoing financial benefits or drawbacks that come with that status.
Let's talk about the cost side for Canada first. Besides the application fees, there's the proof of funds, right?
Yes, that's a big one people need to plan for. To be eligible for express entry under certain streams, you need to show you have enough money to support yourself and your family upon arrival. It's called proof of funds, or POF.
How much are we talking?
The amount changes slightly each year, but based on recent figures, for a single applicant, you needed to show access to CAD 15,263. And it has to be readily available cash, not borrowed.
Yeah.
You need to prove you have it when you apply and potentially when you land.
Okay, 15,000 Canadian. That's not insignificant. Isn't that a barrier in itself, potentially offsetting the low application fees we discussed earlier?
It definitely requires planning, no question. It's a hurdle. But, the sources frame it differently. That POF is about demonstrating you have the resources to land and get settled. It's a one-time liquidity check for stability.
Right, versus the potential $100 K H-1B payment, which is a cost just to maybe get temporary status.
Exactly. And when you actually budget for landing, what the sources call a landing wallet, covering things like last month's rent, maybe some basic furniture, winter clothes if you need them, plus the fees, medicals. For a single person landing in Toronto, the estimate is still somewhere in the range of USD 5,900 to USD 6,400. You need the POF liquidity behind you, but the actual immediate cost of landing is far less than the H-1B figure.
That's a really important distinction. The POF isn't spent like the H-1B fee. It's your settlement fund.
Okay, now let's flip to the other side, the financial benefits tied to Canadian status, especially for families. This is where Canada often pulls ahead, even if the base salary seems lower. The biggest factor, as we mentioned, is the dual income potential. Spouse gets PR, spouse can work immediately. That second income fundamentally changes the household's financial reality. It's often the quiet multiplier.
Right, and the other huge one for families with kids, childcare.
Massive difference. The sources highlight Canada's push towards subsidized childcare. Using Toronto as an example again, under the CWEL LLCC agreement, that's the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Plan, licensed centers, we're targeting significantly lower fees. The figure mentioned was a cap around CAD 22 per day starting in early 2025.
$22 a day, compared to what childcare costs in major U.S. tech hubs.
It's a night and day difference for many families' budgets. That kind of subsidy frees up a significant chunk of monthly income compared to paying, potentially thousands per month out of pocket in the U.S.
So when you factor in immediate spouse income and heavily subsidized childcare, the Canadian offer starts to look very different financially, even if the salary number was lower initially.
Precisely. It's about the net financial outcome and the quality of life factors.
So if we boil all this down, what's the quick decision logic the sources seem to suggest?
It kind of comes down to two main questions for the candidate. First, how much do you value and need status certainty and stability within, say, the next year? If the answer is a lot, then you really need to be actively pursuing the Canadian PR track now.
Okay, stability points to Canada. Second question.
Second, how much will those other factors like immediate spouse work rights or affordable childcare or even just the freedom to change jobs without visa stress impact your family's overall financial well-being and, frankly, your peace of mind? If those factors are significant for you, Canada often comes out ahead on that status-adjusted reality, even against a higher U.S. salary on paper.
So the whole calculation really has shifted. It's less about, can my potential U.S. employer afford the visa hurdles, and more about, can I afford the personal and financial risk of not having portable, stable status?
That's a great way to put it. Hashtag outro crew.
Well, this has been a really practical deep dive. We kicked off with that pretty shocking cost comparison, the potential USD 100K H-1B payment versus the roughly CAD 1,600 in Canadian PR fees. That 80 to 90 times difference is stark.
It grabs your attention for sure.
But digging into the sources, the real story isn't just the sticker shock, it's the underlying value proposition, isn't it? The career option value that comes with PR.
Exactly. That's the headline takeaway. It's the portability, the freedom to change jobs. It's the immediate work rights for a spouse, boosting household income. It's that stable pathway to citizenship and maybe even easier U.S. access down the road via TN. It's about using stable status as leverage.
Leverage to control your career, reduce that dependence on one employer, escape a volatile immigration system.
Right. And think about this last point. How long does it take to get your first paycheck once you actually start a new job?
Usually a few weeks, right? 2 to 4
Yeah.
weeks, typically.
Pretty much the same, whether you land that H-1B job or you land in Canada with PR and start working. The time from starting work to first pay is similar. But having that Canadian PR in your back pocket or actively in process, it dramatically cuts down your runway risk
How so?
because you're not desperately clinging to one specific job offer just to maintain status. You have the stability of PR or the clear path to it. This gives you confidence. Confidence to maybe negotiate harder on an offer, to be pickier, and crucially, to walk away from a bad job situation quickly if you need to without facing immediate deportation concerns.
Ah, I see. The stability reduces the desperation factor when job hunting or dealing with a difficult work environment.
Precisely. So the final thought to leave you with, based on all this, is how much is that option value, that status-adjusted leverage, truly worth? Not just in dollars, but in terms of reducing your career anxiety and boosting your actual power in the job market. That's the question this whole situation forces you to confront.